Okay, today we're going to start talking about how you can format text. And we're going to not do everything, obviously, that you can do in text, but we're just going to play around with a little bit. We're also going to do some work with font and importing your own font, and those things are kind of fun to work on. So, we already talked about how we can play with color. Well, we can also change the color of text, kind of like we've already seen. You know that, like when we change the color of our H1 headings to red and our H2 headings to green. So we've already covered things like that. There are some other alignment features where we can align by left, right, and center. Like, for example, if I wanted to align an H1 heading, so I can remember have multiple types of styling for an element. So if I wanted to say that I want all H1 headings to be in the center, I could do that. So if I save this and then we go back, and I know that I have one, I'm pretty sure I have one on this page. Yeah, right there. So if I do a refresh, now you see that that H1 heading is centered on the page, just like we wanted it to. Okay, so that one's a pretty simple one to demonstrate. Some other ones that I think of that are of value is something called text decoration. Um, that allows you, let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Like, here's one where you could take a link, and anytime you see a link, instead of it being underlined, you remove the underline. So that's one option, although personally, I like to have the underline there. I'm going to go ahead and I thought there was a way I could click on that. Let me go down and see. Sometimes it's easier if I take a look at all the properties at one time. So let's go to text decoration. And you definitely have some options here. You could do something called overline. That's very useful in math. You could do line through to draw the line through some text, underline and overline. So here is a quick example of how you might use some of those features. So let's say that I'm in let's just go ahead and go to let's go to our home page, and let's go down, and I'm going to, right after the last table, I'm going to go ahead and add a paragraph, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to put AB length is, and I'm going to write 2.5 inches, just as an example. So that's the only thing that's going to go in my paragraph. So now I could go to my styling, and I can, oh, let me go back. Let me change that. I have a different idea. I don't want that to be confusing. So let's go back, and let's just say AB. So this would be something like you might do in math. So for this paragraph, if you wanted to do the text overline, so what we could do is just copy, let's see, we want to do the overline. And then you could come here and to the styling and style your paragraph. But I already know I'm not going to like this because it's going to apply to everything. Let me hide this. And we need to put that inside of a paragraph. So I'm going to, oopsie. You know what? I've made a decision. We're going to wait on that. Let's just take that out. let's take a look at some of the other styling. I'll make a note that that's something that we have to do later. Some other things, though, that if I go back to the list, this is such an easy way to take a look at all the different properties for text is just to go to the bottom and look at all the properties. Some other ones that I think are useful our text indent, and we would probably want to use this on a paragraph, a large piece of text, something like this. So if I say text dash indent, and then I use I can use either these EM values, which are like an engineering unit, the percent, or pixels. I kind of vote for pixels. So now this for sure I want to try on a paragraph. So let's copy that. Let's go to the end of our styling, and we're just going to style all paragraphs to be indented. So let's go ahead and put that in. So we're going to use a text indent of 50 pixels, just like they did in the example. Let's go ahead and save. And now if we do a refresh, oopsie, if we do a refresh on our home page, we definitely have a couple paragraphs. So now you can see they're indented. So ooh, I really like that feature, big time. Some other things you can do is to do this text shadow. This one, you could play around with this all day long. And this is really a fun one. So I'm applying the text shadow property, and we have to get a sense for what all this does. And I'm trying to see. These are the three values when you're putting in, oh, here's the format right here. So when you call text shadow, you are first specifying the horizontal shadow, the position of the horizontal shadow, negative values are allowed, then the vertical shadow, and then something called the blur radius, and then a color. So let's take a look at an example. So here is on H1 headings, I'm going to apply the shadow, the horizontal and the vertical, and the color. This happens to be red. So to see the effect, like you could change this number to 5. So how does it affect the shadow if I increase the horizontal number? So you can play with that. You could do the same thing to the vertical and run it and see how that changes things. So that tends to move it down. And then of course you could change the color. Like I'm not a big fan of that red color, that's for sure. So maybe I would just put in a gray. I'm going to guess that that's like a by name one. Oh, and it is. So it's very subtle. So why don't we copy this? And of course you could use a different color or whatever. So I'm going to copy that to my H1 styling. I'm going to add that. So my H1s are going to be red. They're going to be aligned center. And now I'm going to add some text shadow. And I'm going to do gray. So now if I hit save and I go back to my home page, that is going to be applied to this heading here. And I can see it really helps it stand out. And like I said, play around with some of these numbers. Now maybe gray isn't the right color to choose when I'm doing a red H1, but please understand that this is just for demo purposes only. So let's try light blue and see if we can see a difference. Ooh, it's really hard to see because my background is blue. But if I go back in there and I change, let's see, the text shadow and the horizontal to 5, then it stands out a little more. Play around with it. I'm going to go back and put it back to 2 and gray because I kind of think that looked all right. Okay, next we're going to spend some time playing around with font.